The transport shuttle's engines whined as it descended through Calith Prime's rust-colored atmosphere. Kira Voss pressed her face to the porthole, watching the desolate landscape unfold below. A world of red dust, jagged canyons, and the skeletal remains of mining installations long abandoned after the ore veins ran dry. "First time on Calith?" asked the pilot, a grizzled man whose prosthetic arm gleamed silver against his weathered skin. "First time anywhere this far out," Kira replied, adjusting the neural interface crown that helped her process historical data. As one of the youngest archivists ever certified by the Galactic Historical Society, she'd spent most of her 28 years buried in climate-controlled libraries on the inner worlds. "I'm researching the frontier wars." The pilot's expression shifted. "Those wars ended over a century ago. Nothing left here but ghosts and regret. That's exactly what I'm looking for." After landing at the crumbling spaceport, Kira shouldered her field pack and activated her locator beacon. According to military records, Commander Thane Voss had last been seen near the Crimson Gorge, where his cavalry unit had made their final stand against overwhelming odds. The official reports claimed he'd died valiantly, but family stories whispered of something more mysterious, a disappearance rather than a death. The gorge lay 50 kilometers from the settlement. Kira hired a hoverbike and set out across the wasteland, following coordinates that had remained unchanged for over a century. The wind carried traces of metal and old smoke, as if the battles had ended yesterday rather than generations ago. She found the battlefield marker easily enough, a simple stone obelisk listing the names of the fallen. Thane Voss was carved near the top, his rank and unit designation worn smooth by decades of sandstorms, but something felt wrong. The positioning didn't match the tactical reports she'd memorized. Following her instincts, Kira hiked deeper into the gorge. Her scanner detected anomalous readings beneath a cluster of collapsed boulders. After 2 hours of careful excavation, she uncovered a metallic surface, not natural rock, but manufactured alloy. The entrance revealed itself when she pressed her palm to a biometric scanner that somehow still functioned after all these years. Lights flickered to life, illuminating a corridor that descended into the planet's heart. Her breath caught as she realized what she'd found, a hidden military facility, sealed and forgotten. The main chamber took her breath away. Banks of equipment, hummed with residual power, their displays showing system status in languages she barely recognized. But at the center of the room, enclosed in a shimmering stasis field, stood the most magnificent creature she'd ever seen. The warhorse was clearly bioengineered, its proportions perfect, its coat a deep crimson that seemed to shift and flow like liquid fire. Cybernetic implants gleamed along its neck and legs, and armor plating covered its flanks. Even in suspended animation, it radiated power and intelligence. As Kira approached, her genetic scanner activated automatically, standard protocol for investigating historical sites. The readings made her stumble backward in shock. The horse's biosignature contained familial markers. Somehow, impossibly, this creature was genetically bonded to her bloodline. Her hands trembling, she reached for the stasis field controls. The moment her fingers touched the activation panel, the horse's eyes snapped open. Not the dark eyes of a normal animal, but brilliant amber orbs filled with unmistakable intelligence and recognition. The stasis field dissolved, and 120 years of waiting came to an end. The Crimson Stallion stepped from the dissipating stasis field with fluid grace, its hooves making no sound on the metal floor. Kira held her breath as the magnificent creature approached, lowering its great head until they were eye to eye. When it gently pressed its forehead against hers, warmth flooded through her mind, not her own thoughts, but something ancient and familiar. "Thane," a voice whispered in her consciousness. "You've returned." "I'm not Thane," she whispered back. I'm Kira, his descendant. The horse, Crimson, she somehow knew its name now, stepped back and studied her with those intelligent amber eyes. Understanding passed between them, and with it came fragments of memory that weren't her own. Flashes of battle, the thunder, of cavalry charges, and always the bond between rider and mount that transcended mere partnership. A sound from the tunnel entrance made them both turn. Footsteps echoed through the chamber as someone descended the corridor. Kira's hand moved instinctively to the plasma pistol at her hip, but Crimson remained calm, his enhanced senses apparently detecting no threat. The man who emerged from the shadows was tall and lean, with dark hair and piercing green eyes that held an edge of wariness. He wore the practical clothing of someone accustomed to dangerous work: reinforced jacket, utility belt laden with tools, and boots designed for treacherous terrain. Fascinating, he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. I've been tracking unusual energy readings from this site for weeks, but I never expected to find... He gestured at the awakened warhorse. This. Who are you? Kira demanded, though something about his presence felt more intriguing than threatening. Jackson Drake. I'm a xenoarchaeologist. I specialize in lost civilizations and forgotten technology. His eyes moved from her to Crimson and back again. And you've just activated something that's been dormant since the Frontier Wars. As if responding to the mention of those distant conflicts, Crimson moved closer to Kira. When the stallion's neural implants brushed against her interface crown, the world exploded into shared memory. She was Thane Voss, charging across a battlefield under twin moons. The weight of command pressed down on her shoulders as she led her cavalry against impossible odds. But there was something wrong. Signals intercepted, positions betrayed, friends dying because someone had sold them out. The vision ended abruptly, leaving her gasping. Jackson caught her arm as she swayed, his touch sending an unexpected spark through her despite their brief acquaintance. What did you see? His concern seemed genuine, and she found herself trusting him instinctively. Betrayal, she whispered. My ancestor. He knew someone was feeding information to the enemy. Over the following hours, Jackson helped her explore the facility while Crimson stood watch. They discovered Thane's personal quarters, preserved exactly as he'd left them. Maps covered every surface, marked with tactical notations and circled names, some crossed out in red ink. He was investigating his own command structure, Jackson observed, studying the annotations. His proximity as they worked together made Kira increasingly aware of his quiet competence and the way his eyes lit up when examining historical artifacts. They found Thane's personal logs next, holographic recordings that painted a picture of growing paranoia and desperate investigation. In the final entry, recorded just days before his supposed death, Thane's face was haggard with exhaustion and grief. I know who's been selling us out, his image said. General Morrison, Colonel Hayes, maybe others. They're not just giving the enemy our positions. They're selling weapons to both sides, prolonging the war for profit. I've gathered the evidence, but I don't know who I can trust anymore. The recording flickered, showing Thane looking directly at the camera. If something happens to me, if I don't survive the next battle, I've programmed Crimson with everything. The genetic lock will ensure only my bloodline can access the truth. As the hologram faded, Kira felt Jackson's hand on her shoulder. The simple gesture of comfort sent warmth through her, and when she turned to meet his eyes, she saw her own growing attraction reflected there. We need to get you off this planet, he said quietly. If what your ancestor discovered is true, and if those families still hold power, they'll kill me to keep it buried, she finished. Crimson whinnied softly, and through their neural link, Kira felt his agreement. The stallion's enhanced genetics had kept him alive for over a century, waiting for this moment. Now that the truth was awakening, They would all be in danger, but as Jackson's fingers intertwined with hers, Kira realized she wouldn't face that danger alone. 3 days of intensive research in Thane's hidden facility had revealed the scope of the conspiracy. Kira sat surrounded by holographic displays, while Crimson stood nearby, his neural implants interfacing directly with the ancient computers. The stallion's enhanced memory served as a living archive, containing not just battle records, but financial transactions, coded communications, and damning evidence of systematic corruption. Jackson emerged from the deeper chambers carrying a case of data crystals. "I've found what appears to be the complete communication logs between the corrupt officers and their off-world contacts," he said, setting the case down beside her. "Your ancestor was thorough, maybe too thorough for his own good." The weight of discovery pressed down on Kira as she reviewed the evidence. General Morrison hadn't just betrayed troop movements. He'd orchestrated entire campaigns to maximize casualties, while his weapons-dealing syndicate profited from both sides. Thousands had died unnecessarily, their sacrifice perverted into blood money. The Morrison family still controls 3 major defense contractors, she said, cross-referencing current galactic corporate records, and Colonel Hayes's grandson is now Admiral Hayes, head of the Outer Rim Defense Council. Jackson moved behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders. As he studied the displays, his touch had become natural over their days together, small gestures of comfort and connection that spoke to a growing intimacy neither had acknowledged aloud. "This could destabilize the entire frontier government," he said quietly. "Are you prepared for that kind of responsibility?" Before she could answer, Crimson's head snapped up, his enhanced senses detecting something beyond human perception. Through their neural link, Kira felt his alarm. Aircraft approaching, military configuration, jamming frequencies active. "We have company," she said, already moving to gather the most critical data crystals. Jackson was at the weapon locker, pulling out plasma rifles and ammunition packs. "How did they find us so fast?" "Probably been monitoring for any activation of frontier war-era technology," Kira replied, securing the evidence in a hardened case. "The moment we powered up this facility, we lit up their sensors." The sound of landing craft echoed through the gorge above. Crimson moved to Kira's side, and she felt his readiness through their bond. 120 years of waiting had made him eager for action. They emerged from the facility into the crimson twilight of Calith, primed to find armed soldiers rappelling down the canyon walls. Military vehicles surrounded the gorge exits, their searchlights cutting through the gathering darkness. "Dr. Voss," an amplified voice called out, "you're in possession of classified military materials. Surrender now, and you'll be treated fairly." Jackson's snort of derision echoed her own thoughts. People who committed century-old mass murder weren't known for their fairness to whistleblowers. "Can we reach the Eastern Passage?" he asked, checking his rifle's charge. Kira consulted Crimson's enhanced tactical awareness. The stallion's war-bred instincts provided a 3-dimensional map of their surroundings, marking enemy positions and potential escape routes. "Not on foot," she said, "but Crimson was designed for this kind of terrain." Without hesitation, she vaulted onto the stallion's back. His bio-engineered physiology adjusted instantly to accommodate her, while his armor's neural interface synchronized with her crown. Suddenly, she could feel his enhanced strength, his perfect balance, his absolute confidence in their ability to escape. Jackson hesitated for only a moment before swinging up behind her. His arms encircled her waist as Crimson launched into motion, his hooves finding purchase on seemingly impossible surfaces as he bounded up the canyon wall. Plasma bolts seared the air around them, but Crimson's enhanced reflexes made him nearly impossible to target. They crested the rim as spotlights converged on their position, then plunged into the maze of rock formations that stretched toward the planet's polar region. Hours later, in a cave system that Crimson's memory banks identified as a supply cache. From the ancient war, they finally stopped to rest. The stallion stood guard at the cave mouth, while Kira and Jackson huddled around a small thermal heater. "We can't run forever," Jackson said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "They'll have orbital surveillance, tracking algorithms." "I know." Kira stared at the data crystal containing Thane's evidence. "But we also can't let this die with us." In the flickering light, she noticed how the stress of their flight had sharpened Jackson's features, made his green eyes more intense. When he reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gesture held weeks of unspoken attraction. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "I'm glad I was there when you found him." The kiss that followed was inevitable, born from shared danger and mutual trust. In the warmth of his arms, with Crimson's steady presence watching over them, Kira felt something she'd never experienced in her sterile academic life, the fierce joy of living fully in a moment that might be their last. When they finally broke, apart, both breathing hard, she saw her own determination reflected in his eyes. "We're going to expose this," she said. "All of it." "Together," he agreed, and sealed the promise with another kiss. Dawn brought no safety. Crimson's enhanced hearing detected the distant hum of search drones, while his olfactory sensors identified the chemical signatures of tracking compounds in the air. They'd been found again. "How are they staying on us?" Jackson muttered, hastily packing their supplies as Kira interfaced with Crimson's tactical systems. Through the stallion's advanced sensors, she could see the search pattern, too precise, too focused. "They're not tracking us," she realized with growing alarm. "They're tracking him. There must be some kind of locator beacon in his original programming." Crimson's distress rippled through their neural link. The idea that his own systems had been compromised, turned against the very mission he'd waited over a century to complete, filled him with rage that matched her own. "Can we disable it?" Jackson asked, shouldering his pack. "Not without specialized equipment," Kira replied. But even as she said it, Crimson was sharing something else through their bond, deeper memories from Thane's final days. Wait. Thane knew this might happen. He programmed a failsafe. The knowledge flowed through her. Hidden routes through the planet's extensive cave systems, supply caches stocked with equipment, and most importantly, an underground facility in the polar region where they could access Crimson's core programming safely. They mounted quickly as the sound of approaching aircraft grew louder. This time, their pursuers weren't taking chances. Military assault craft, armed with enough firepower to level half the canyon. Crimson launched into his fluid gallop, but instead of heading for open ground, he descended into a fissure that seemed far too narrow for his massive frame. The crack in the planetary surface led to an underground river system that Thane had mapped during his investigation. Bioluminescent minerals in the cave walls provided enough light for Crimson's enhanced vision to navigate, while the water masked their thermal signatures from orbital sensors. Hours passed in the alien beauty of the subterranean world. Stalactites dripped overhead while strange formations created chambers of cathedral-like grandeur. Through it all, Crimson moved with perfect confidence, his hooves finding purchase on slick stone as he followed passages that hadn't seen sunlight since the planet's formation. "It's beautiful," Jackson whispered, his arms tightened around Kira's waist as they navigated a particularly narrow ledge above an underground waterfall. "Thane chose well," she agreed, feeling the echo of her ancestors' thoughts through Crimson's memories. The commander had planned for everything, including the possibility that his own mount might be compromised by the very people he served. They emerged from the caves as Galactic Prime's twin moons rose over the polar ice fields. The facility Thane had prepared was built into a glacier, its entrance concealed by shifting ice formations that reformed automatically to hide any signs of passage. Inside, powered by geothermal energy that would last millennia, they found everything needed to complete their mission. Advanced communication arrays capable of broadcasting across multiple star systems, data processing equipment that could compile and verify every piece of evidence they'd gathered, and most importantly, the specialized surgical bay where Crimson's tracking beacon could be safely removed. "This will hurt," Kira warned the stallion as she prepared the micro-surgical tools. Crimson's response through their neural link was resolute. He'd endured far worse for far less important causes. The procedure took 3 hours. Jackson assisted, his steady hands and quick mind making him an ideal surgical partner. Working so closely together, their bodies touching as they maneuvered around Crimson's massive frame, the attraction that had been building between them became impossible to ignore. When the beacon was finally extracted, a device no larger than a grain of sand, but sophisticated enough to broadcast across light years, Jackson's hand covered hers as she set down the surgical tools. "We did it," he said, but his eyes weren't on their accomplishment. They were on her face, drinking in every detail, as if memorizing her features. "We did," she agreed, suddenly aware that they were alone in the sterile quiet of the surgical bay, Crimson resting peacefully under mild sedation, while his enhanced healing factors repaired the minor incision. This time, when Jackson kissed her, there was no urgency of flight, no fear of discovery, just the two of them, and the acknowledgement of feelings that had grown from partnership into something deeper. His hands tangled in her hair as she pulled him closer, months of academic isolation and years of emotional walls crumbling under the intensity of what she felt for this man who'd chosen to risk everything for her cause. They made love on the narrow cot in the facility's rest area, their bodies moving together with the same synchronicity they'd developed working side by side. In the quiet aftermath, with Jackson's arms around her and Crimson's steady breathing nearby, Kira felt complete in a way that had nothing to do with historical research or family legacy. "Whatever tomorrow brings," Jackson murmured against her hair, "tonight was worth everything." She turned in his arms to face him, seeing her own love reflected in his green eyes. "Tomorrow we change the galaxy," she said. "Tonight we just love each other." Outside, the aurora danced across Galactic Prime's polar sky, but inside their hidden sanctuary, 3 unlikely allies rested before the final phase of their century-spanning mission. The quantum communication array hummed to life as Kira made final adjustments to the broadcast parameters. 3 days of preparation had compressed Thane's evidence into an unassailable presentation. Financial records, battle communications, and most damning of all, Crimson's own memories translated into visual testimony that no court in the galaxy could dismiss. "Signal strength is optimal," Jackson reported from his position at the technical controls. His expertise with ancient technology had proven invaluable in adapting Thane's century-old equipment to interface with modern communication protocols. "We'll reach every major population center simultaneously." Crimson stood nearby, his role in the broadcast complete, but his presence still vital. Through their neural link, Kira felt his satisfaction at finally fulfilling the mission that had defined his entire existence. But more than that, she sensed his contentment at having found not just purpose, but family. "Are you ready?" she asked, looking between the 2 most important beings in her life. Jackson's smile was warm with love and pride. "Change the galaxy, remember?" She activated the transmission. Across 17 star systems, on worlds where the descendants of frontier war veterans still honored their ancestors' sacrifice, the truth erupted like a nova. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial transfers, coded communications, strategic betrayals that had cost thousands of lives for the sake of profit. Within hours, emergency sessions convened in the Galactic Senate while news networks dissected every detail of the century-old conspiracy. Admiral Hayes resigned in disgrace within 6 hours. Morrison defense contractors saw their stock price collapse as governments across the galaxy cancelled contracts worth trillions of credits. Most importantly, the historical record was corrected. Commander Thane Voss and his cavalry had died heroes, betrayed by the very system they'd sworn to protect. But the personal cost was immediate. Military ships converged on Galactic Prime from 3 directions, their commanders operating under orders to contain the situation by any means necessary. "Time to go," Jackson said, monitoring the approaching fleet. "Your broadcast bought us credibility, but not safety." They had one advantage their pursuers couldn't anticipate: Crimson's knowledge of Thane's ultimate contingency plan. Deep beneath the polar facility lay a hangar containing the commander's personal spacecraft, a prototype stealth ship designed for intelligence operations. Powered by the same advanced technology that had kept Crimson alive for over a century, it could evade detection long enough to reach the neutral systems. The escape was a masterpiece of tactical precision. Crimson's enhanced senses guided them through sensor shadows, while Jackson's piloting skills, honed on archaeological expeditions to dangerous worlds, kept them ahead of pursuing fighters. They broke atmosphere just as orbital bombardment began, reducing Thane's facility to molten ice. 6 months later, on the peaceful world of Haven's Rest in the neutral zone, Kira stood in the paddock, watching Crimson graze alongside other rescued warhorses from various conflicts. The sanctuary she and Jackson had established was already home to dozens of enhanced animals, their service to various causes honored with peaceful retirement. "The Senate vote came through," Jackson said, approaching with a data pad and 2 cups of coffee. "Full pardons for you, me, and official recognition of Crimson as a galactic heritage artifact." Kira accepted both the coffee and the kiss he offered, marveling at how natural their partnership had become. "And the other matter?" His grin widened. "The Morrison heir wants to meet. Apparently, discovering your family fortune was built on mass murder makes some people want to make amends. She's offering to fund the sanctuary permanently." Through her neural link, Kira felt Crimson's amusement at the irony. The stallion had developed a keen appreciation for poetic justice during their adventures together. "What about you?" she asked, studying Jackson's face. "Are you sure about giving up xenoarchaeology for this?" "Are you kidding?" He gestured at the sanctuary around them, where beings from a dozen worlds worked together to heal the psychological wounds of enhanced animals bred for war. "I'm still studying lost civilizations. I'm just helping create new ones, too." That evening, as Galactic Prime's twin moons rose over their new home, they sat on their porch, watching Crimson run with the other horses. His bio-engineered physiology meant he would outlive them both, but through their neural link, Kira knew he was content. He'd found his purpose in protecting rather than fighting, and in the family they'd built together. "Do you ever regret it?" Jackson asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Giving up the quiet academic life?" Kira thought of her sterile university office, her safe but lonely research, the life she'd led before finding a Crimson stallion in a forgotten cave. Then she felt Crimson's peaceful contentment through their bond, saw the rescued animals playing in the sanctuary they'd built, and leaned into the warmth of the man she loved. "Never," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, but down in the paddock, legends walked among ordinary horses, finally at peace after their long service to justice. The past had been honored, the truth had been told, and the future stretched ahead full of possibility. Crimson lifted his magnificent head and nickered softly, a sound that somehow conveyed satisfaction, love, and the promise of adventures yet to come. Through their neural link, Kira felt his message clearly. The mission is complete, the family endures, and tomorrow we build something new,